At family dinner, my sister announced, "Mom and Dad said you never contribute anything to this family." Everyone applauded. I smiled and said, "Perfect." Then the $8,000 I've been paying toward their mortgage every month stops today. Dad choked on his drink and Mom turned pale. The crystal chandelier shimmered, casting its deceptive warmth over the dining table. But for me, Ashley, the air was cold. My roast chicken, usually a comfort, lay before me, its perfection untouched. Thanksgiving at my parents' house had always been an elaborate affair, steeped in tradition, yet this year, a discordant note vibrated beneath the surface. Across from me, my younger sister Madison, flanked by her husband Trevor and their 2 children, radiated a practiced familial bliss. My brother Kyle occupied the seat beside Dad, his wife Jennifer beside him, a familiar discomfort etched upon her features. I had driven 3 grueling hours to be here, my body humming with residual exhaustion from a week of back-to-back surgeries at the hospital where I practiced as an orthopedic surgeon. The I-95 traffic had been a brutal gauntlet, leaving me barely enough time to shed my scrubs before making the obligatory trip. Still, family was family, and I appeared every year an unwavering fixture. "Ashley, could you pass the gravy?" Mom's voice, sharper than usual, sliced through my thoughts. I handed it over, a polite smile fixed on my face, but internally, a sense of unease coiled tighter. Something had been off since my arrival. Whispers died abruptly when I entered rooms. Glances were exchanged when they believed I wasn't looking. The tension clung to the air, a palpable entity, thick enough to choke on. Madison, ever the conductor of our family's passive-aggressive orchestra, cleared her throat with theatrical flourish. "So, Ashley," she began, her voice dripping with feigned concern, "still working those crazy hours? Must be nice not having any real responsibilities outside of work." "The hospital keeps me busy," I replied evenly, taking a measured sip of my wine, refusing to rise to the bait. "I don't know how you do it," Jennifer chimed in, though her voice lacked any genuine sincerity. "Working all the time, no husband, no kids. What do you even spend your money on?" The question hung there, heavy and deliberate, a finely crafted projectile. I set down my fork, the clink echoing in the silence, sensing precisely where this ambush was headed. Kyle, emboldened by Jennifer's opening volley, jumped in next. "Yeah, Ash. You've been pretty absent lately. Haven't seen you at Mom and Dad's much. Kind of selfish, don't you think?" My mother, a picture of studied detachment, dabbed her lips with a napkin, saying nothing. My father, suddenly engrossed, focused in almost obsessive intensity on his mashed potatoes. Their silence, a resounding void, spoke volumes. Madison leaned back in her chair, a predatory smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. I could feel it. She'd been building to this all evening. The golden child, poised to deliver her pronouncement, held the room captive. "You know what?" Madison announced loudly, her voice demanding the attention of every soul at the table. "Mom and Dad told me something interesting the other day. They said you never contribute anything to this family. That you're too busy with your fancy career to care about anyone but yourself." The words hit me like a physical blow, a concussive force. My gaze darted to my parents, waiting for their contradiction, their defense, a flicker of outrage on my behalf. There was none. Mom averted her eyes. Dad, inexplicably, suddenly needed more wine. "It's true," Kyle added, buoyed by Madison's proclamation. "You show up for holidays and that's it. The rest of us are here all the time, helping out, being present. You just collect your big doctor paycheck and forget where you came from." To my horror, Trevor actually started clapping. Then Kyle joined in. Then Jennifer, though her movements were hesitant, her expression slightly uncomfortable. Madison beamed, her triumph shining. Even my nephews and nieces, too young to comprehend the venom, clapped along, mimicking the adults. The applause reverberated through the dining room, each rhythmic clap a stinging slap across my face. My mother's face remained impassive. My father stared into his wine glass as if it held the secrets of the universe. Something inside me snapped, not with a volatile rage, but with a crystalline clarity I'd been avoiding for years. I had been making excuses for them, justifying their behavior, deluding myself that family meant unconditional support, even when that support flowed only in one direction. I smiled, a genuine, calm smile that seemed to unravel Madison's smug composure. Perfect, I articulated, my voice steady, clear, and utterly disarming. Then the $8,000 I've been faithfully transferring for their mortgage every single month, that stops today. The clapping died instantly. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad choked on his drink, wine sputtering everywhere. Mom turned a ghastly pale, all color draining from her face as if a plug had been pulled. Madison's mouth fell open, her smirk dissolving into disbelief. Kyle froze mid-reach for the dinner rolls. What? Madison finally managed to whisper. You heard me, I continued, maintaining that unnervingly calm smile. If I contribute nothing to this family, then there's absolutely no reason for me to keep making their mortgage payments, is there? That money can go towards something far more worthwhile. Perhaps a nice vacation. I've always wanted to see the Maldives. Ashley, wait. Mom started, her voice a reedy tremor. No, Patricia. I used her first name deliberately, a small act of rebellion. Madison's right. You both apparently told her I contribute nothing. So, I'm simply taking you at your word. The bank transfer scheduled for next week? Cancelled. The one after that? Also cancelled. In fact, every single one going forward. Dad's face had morphed from beet red to an alarming shade of purple. Sweetheart, you can't. What, Richard? Stop paying for a house that isn't mine? Stop funding a mortgage for people who publicly declare I contribute nothing? I absolutely can. In fact, I should have done it years ago. The truth, a torrent long held back, now poured out. I couldn't stop it. Didn't want to stop it. Do you know how long I've been doing this? For years. For years of $8,000 a month. That's $384,000, in case anyone's wondering. I could have paid off my medical school loans by now. Could have bought my own house. Could have done 1,000 things with that money. Jennifer looked genuinely shocked. You've been paying their mortgage this whole time? Every month, I confirmed, my gaze sweeping the table. Started when Dad's business went under and they were facing foreclosure. They asked me to help temporarily. Temporarily turned into 4 years. Madison's face had gone from pale to an angry flush. Mom, Dad, is this true? Mom couldn't meet her eyes. Dad suddenly found the ceiling incredibly interesting. They didn't tell you? I asked, though I already knew the answer. How interesting. They didn't mention that your selfish, absent sister was the only reason they still had a roof over their heads. That while you all gathered here for Sunday dinners and birthday parties in this house, I was the one actually keeping it out of the bank's hands. Ashley, please, Mom pleaded, tears brimming in her eyes. You can't do this to us. I can't do this to you? I repeated, my voice rising slightly before I reined it back in. You just sat there while your children tore me apart. You didn't say a word. You let them applaud the idea that I'm worthless to this family. And now you want to talk about what I can't do. Kyle had gone very quiet. Trevor looked as if he yearned for immediate teleportation. The kids, sensing the profound tension, had stopped making noise, their eyes wide and bewildered. When you called me 4 years ago, I said, directing my words solely at my father, you were crying. You begged me not to let you lose this house. You said it was everything you and Mom had built together. You promised it would just be for a few months until you got back on your feet. Things didn't improve as quickly as we thought they would, Dad mumbled, a pathetic excuse. Clearly. Yet, somehow you found money to help Madison and Trevor with their down payment last year. $50,000, wasn't it, Madison? My sister's crimson face was confirmation enough. And Kyle, that boat you bought last summer, the one docked at the marina? Who do you think gave Mom and Dad the money they loaned you for that? Kyle's face went ashen. That was their money. They said it was theirs to give. I scoffed. Technically true, since I gave it to them. 20,000. But it was never really theirs, was it? It was mine. Passed through them like I was some kind of anonymous ATM. The weight of my words settled over the table like a heavy, suffocating blanket. Mom had started crying quietly. Dad couldn't look at anyone. You used my money to help them, I said softly, the hurt finally seeping into my voice despite my best efforts. You took my money and gave it to your other children while letting them believe I contributed nothing, while letting them think I didn't care. We didn't tell them to say those things, Mom protested weakly. But you didn't correct them either, did you? When they started talking about how absent I was, how selfish I was, you stayed silent. You let them believe a lie because it was easier than admitting the truth. Easier than admitting you needed me, that you've always needed me. Memories flooded back, growing up as the oldest, the responsible one. The one who earned straight A's while Madison barely passed. The one who worked 2 jobs through college while Kyle partied through his trust fund, back when there was still money. The one who never asked for anything because I learned early that asking meant disappointment. I worked 70-hour weeks during my residency, I said, my voice gaining strength. I lived in a studio apartment that had mice, because it was all I could afford while paying off debt and sending you money. I ate ramen for dinner more nights than I can count. I drove a car that was literally falling apart because I couldn't justify buying a new one when you needed help. We didn't know it was that hard for you, Jennifer said quietly, her voice laced with genuine remorse. You didn't ask, I replied simply. None of you asked. You just assumed that because I was a doctor, money wasn't an issue. That my life was easy and comfortable. You never wondered why I never took vacations or why my apartment was in such a terrible neighborhood or why I wore the same 3 outfits in rotation for 2 years. Madison was crying now too. Ashley, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know any of this. Would it have mattered? I asked her directly, my eyes fixed on hers. Before tonight, before you found out about the money, would it have mattered? Or would you still think I was selfish for not showing up to every Sunday dinner, for missing some birthdays, because I was literally in the operating room saving lives? She didn't answer. She couldn't. I missed Thanksgiving 2 years ago, I continued. Do you remember why, Madison? She shook her head. I was performing emergency surgery on a 12-year-old girl who'd been in a car accident. She had multiple fractures that needed immediate attention. If I hadn't been there, her recovery would have been significantly compromised. But all I heard about for months afterward was how I'd chosen work over family. How I didn't care enough to be there. Nobody asked why I missed it. You all just assumed the worst. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. Outside, I could hear distant traffic, the hum of the heating system, the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway, normal sounds in an evening that had become anything but normal. Here's what's going to happen, I said, pulling out my phone. I'm going to call the bank on Monday and stop all automatic transfers to your mortgage account. You have 1 month to figure out your finances. That's more than fair, considering you've had 4 years to get your act together. Ashley, please. Dad finally spoke up, his voice cracking. We'll lose the house. We can't make those payments on our own. Then you should have thought of that before you let your children believe I was worthless, I said coldly. You should have thought of that before you distributed my money to them behind my back. You should have thought of that before you sat silently while they tore me down at your dinner table. What do you want us to do? Mom asked desperately. We can't afford this place without your help. Sell it, I suggested, my voice devoid of emotion. Downsize. Get something you can actually afford on Dad's retirement and your Social Security. Join the real world where people live within their means instead of relying on their daughter to subsidize a lifestyle they can't maintain. This is our home, Mom protested. It's a house, I corrected. A house you couldn't afford to keep. A house that became my burden to carry while you pretended everything was fine. A house you used as a backdrop for family gatherings where I was the villain because I couldn't always attend due to the demanding job that paid for it all. Madison spoke up, her voice small. We can help, Kyle, and I can contribute. With what money? I interrupted. The money you're spending on private school for your kids? The money Kyle's putting into that boat? The money you're both using to maintain your own lives? No, this isn't your problem to solve. It was never your problem. It was theirs, and they made it mine without ever being honest with you about it. Trevor shifted uncomfortably. Look, Ashley, maybe we were too harsh earlier. We didn't understand the full situation. You didn't understand because they lied to you, I said flatly. By omission, maybe. But still lies. They let you all believe that I was the problem, that I was the selfish one who forgot where she came from. They let you think that while cashing my checks every single month. Dad finally looked at me, truly looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Shame. Deep, profound shame. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You're right about all of it. We should have told them. We should have defended you. We should have been grateful instead of letting them think you didn't care. You should have, I agreed. But you didn't. And that tells me everything I need to know about where I stand in this family. Mom reached across the table toward me, but I pulled back. Ashley, you're our daughter. We love you. Love isn't just words, Patricia. Love is action. Love is standing up for someone when they're being attacked. Love is honesty and respect and gratitude. You showed me tonight that whatever you feel for me, it isn't strong enough to override your comfort, your image, your pride. I stood up, my chair scraping harshly against the hardwood floor. Everyone watched me gather my purse and coat. Where are you going? Kyle asked. Back to my life, I said. The one you all think is so easy and selfish. I'm going back to my apartment, and tomorrow I'm going to look at houses. Real houses that I can afford now that I won't be paying someone else's mortgage. Maybe I'll get that dog I've always wanted, but couldn't have because I was never home enough to care for it properly due to my work schedule. Maybe I'll finally take that vacation to Europe I've been putting off for years. You can't just leave. Madison said desperately. We need to talk about this. We just did, I replied. For 4 years, I waited for you all to acknowledge what I was doing. For someone to say thank you, for someone to recognize that I was sacrificing my own financial security for theirs. Instead, I got accused of contributing nothing. So, we're done talking. Jennifer stood up. Ashley, wait. I think everyone's in shock right now. Maybe if we all just calm down. I am calm, I assured her. I'm the calmest I've been in years, actually. Because I finally see clearly. I see that I've been enabling their dysfunction. I see that I've been so desperate for approval from this family that I let myself be used. I see that the only person looking out for me is me. So, that's what I'm going to do from now on. Look out for myself. What about Christmas? Mom asked, suddenly, absurdly. You'll still come for Christmas, won't you? The question was so ridiculous, so tone-deaf, that I actually laughed. You're serious? After tonight, you actually think I want to spend another holiday being your family's emotional punching bag? We can make this right, Dad insisted. Just give us a chance to fix this. You had 4 years to fix it, I said. For years, to be honest. For years to show appreciation. For years to tell your other children to back off when they criticized me for not being around enough. You chose not to. That was your choice. And choices have consequences. I walked toward the front door, my heels clicking sharply on the marble entryway they'd insisted on when they renovated 5 years ago, before the business failed, before everything fell apart, before I became their secret safety net. Ashley, Madison called out, following me. Please don't go like this. We're family. I stopped at the door and turned to face her. Family should build each other up, Madison. Family should have each other's backs. Family should celebrate each other's successes, not resent them. Tell me, when was the last time any of you congratulated me on my career? When was the last time anyone asked how I was doing, really doing, beyond surface pleasantries? When was the last time anyone in this family treated me like I mattered for who I am, not what I could provide? She couldn't answer. The silence was answer enough. I thought so, I said softly. Goodbye, Madison. I hope you all figure things out. I really do, but I won't be the solution anymore. I opened the door and stepped out into the cold November night. Behind me, I could hear crying and raised voices as the full weight of the situation crashed down on them. A pang of guilt, years of conditioning, urged me to turn around, to fix it, to make everyone happy, even at my own expense. Instead, I kept walking to my car. I got in, started the engine, and drove away from that house and everything it represented. I didn't look back. The drive home offered 3 hours to process everything. My hands shook on the steering wheel for the first hour. The second hour, I cried so hard I had to pull over at a rest stop. By the third hour, something had shifted. The oppressive weight I'd unknowingly borne for years, the gnawing anxiety about their stability, the corrosive guilt of never quite measuring up, began to dissolve, leaving behind an unfamiliar, exhilarating lightness. I called my best friend Sarah from medical school. She'd been telling me for years that my family was taking advantage of me. I never wanted to hear it before. You did what? She shrieked when I told her. Oh my God, Ashley. I'm so proud of you. Finally. I feel terrible, I admit it. Of course you do. You're a good person. But Ashley, they were using you. You know that, right? What they did tonight was emotional abuse. They tried to manipulate you by making you feel worthless, so you'd keep proving your worth through money. Her words hit home with searing accuracy. That's exactly what had happened, wasn't it? They created a dynamic where I constantly had to prove I cared, prove I was a good daughter, prove I was worthy of being part of the family, and the currency of that proof was always financial. What do I do now? I asked her, my voice small. You live your life, Sarah said firmly. You take care of yourself for once. You save your money, invest in your own future, and let them figure out their own problems. They're adults, Ashley. They should have been acting like it all along. When I got home to my modest apartment, I made a cup of tea and sat by the window watching the city lights. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since I left. Texts from Madison, Kyle, Mom, even Trevor. I didn't read them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. I called my financial advisor and told him about the change in my monthly expenses. He was thrilled. Ashley, with this extra $8,000 a month, we can max out your retirement contributions, build up your emergency fund, and still have money left over for savings or investments, he said excitedly. You could retire comfortably by 55 with this kind of saving rate. 55. I was only 36 now. That meant 19 years of being able to do whatever I wanted. Travel, volunteer, maybe even teach. The possibilities felt endless. I also called a real estate agent. By Monday, I was looking at houses, real houses with yards and updated kitchens and space for that dog I'd always wanted. Houses I could actually afford now that I wasn't hemorrhaging money every month. The texts kept coming. Moms were desperate, pleading. Dads were apologetic, but subtly manipulative, mentioning health problems and stress. Madison alternated between anger and guilt-tripping. Call mostly sent half-hearted apologies that felt obligatory. I didn't respond to any of them. That weekend, I went through my financial records. For years of bank statements, spreadsheets I'd meticulously maintained, tracking every payment. The numbers were staggering when laid out before me. $384,000. Money that could have fundamentally altered my entire life trajectory. I calculated what that money could have done differently. If I'd invested it conservatively with monthly contributions at a 7% return, it would be worth nearly $425,000 by now. I could have paid off my student loans entirely and still had over $200,000 left. I could have bought a house years ago, built equity, lived somewhere safe and comfortable instead of that mouse-infested studio. The anger came in waves. Not explosive rage, but a deep, burning resentment at how thoroughly I'd been used. They'd seen me struggling and said nothing. They'd watched me sacrifice and felt entitled to it. They'd taken and taken and taken, then had the audacity to let their other children call me selfish. I found old emails from my mother during the early years of my career. One caught my attention, dated 7 years ago, right after I'd finished residency and started my first attending position. I'd written to her about how exhausted I was, how I was still adjusting to the demanding schedule, how I couldn't afford to replace my broken phone while paying off loans. Her response had been brief. That's what you signed up for, honey. Medicine is demanding. We're proud of you. No offer of help. No concern about my well-being. Just pride in my accomplishments because my success reflected well on them. Another email. This one from 4.5 years ago, right before the mortgage payments started. I'd mentioned considering a job offer in Seattle that paid significantly more. Dad's response had been immediate and forceful. You can't leave. Your family is here. We need you close by. Don't be selfish about money when family should come first. 2 months later, they called asking for help with the mortgage. I turned down that Seattle job to stay close. The position would have meant an extra $90,000 a year. Over 4 years, that was $360,000 I'd sacrificed to stay close to people who weaponized my proximity against me. The manipulation had been so subtle, so wrapped in the language of family values and togetherness that I hadn't seen it for what it was. They kept me close and kept me paying, all while making sure I felt guilty enough to never question it. Sunday evening, I drafted an email, not to send, just to organize my thoughts. I wrote everything I was feeling, every hurt, every realization, every moment of clarity. By the time I finished, it was 15 pages long. I saved it in a folder labeled Healing and felt marginally better having externalized it all. On Monday, I called the bank and stopped the automatic transfer. The customer service representative asked if I was sure. I'd never been more sure of anything in my life. Yes, I said firmly. Cancel it. Done, she confirmed. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Actually, yes, I said. I'd like to set up a separate savings account. Something with a high interest rate. I'll be depositing $8,000 a month. The satisfaction I felt when she set that up was indescribable. $8,000, that would be mine. That would grow for me. That would fund my future, my dreams, my life. Work became my sanctuary. The hospital was demanding but rewarding. My patients appreciated me. My colleagues respected me. Nobody there expected me to set myself on fire to keep them warm. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I finally read some of the messages. Mom's were the hardest to read because she genuinely seemed to not understand why I was so upset. She kept talking about family loyalty and how children should help their parents. Nothing about gratitude, nothing about the deception, nothing acknowledging that what they'd done was wrong. Dad's messages were more self-aware. He admitted they'd handled everything badly. He said he was ashamed, but even his apologies were tinged with expectation that I would eventually come around, forgive them, resume the payments. He couldn't conceive of a world where his daughter simply said no and meant it. Madison sent the most messages. Some were angry, calling me selfish and heartless. Others were pleading, talking about family bonds and forgiveness. A few were actually thoughtful, admitting she'd been wrong and that she understood why I was hurt. Those ones almost got to me. Almost. Kyle's messages were brief and infrequent. He'd never been good at emotional expression. His apologies felt rote, like he was checking a box rather than genuinely reflecting on what had happened. The hospital became my refuge during this time. Dr. Marcus Chin, the head of orthopedics, noticed something different about me. During a case review meeting, he pulled me aside. "You seem lighter somehow," he observed. Different. Good. Different. I found myself telling him everything. The whole story spilled out in the doctor's lounge over terrible coffee. Marcus listened without interrupting, his expression growing increasingly incredulous. "Ashley, that's financial abuse," he said bluntly when I finished. "What they did to you, letting you struggle while taking your money and redistributing it to your siblings without acknowledgement, that's textbook exploitation." Hearing someone validate my experience so clearly brought unexpected tears. I thought I was overreacting. "You weren't," Marcus assured me. "If anything, you underreacted for 4 years. Good for you for finally drawing a boundary. Stick to it." His words stayed with me. I'd been so conditioned to minimize my own needs, to see self-sacrifice as virtue, that I couldn't recognize abuse when I was living it. The clarity hurt, but it also freed something inside me. I started seeing a therapist. Dr. Rachel Goldstein specialized in family dynamics and boundaries. Our first session, she asked me to describe my family in one word. I said, complicated. She asked what word I'd use if I was being completely honest. After a long pause, I whispered, toxic. "That's a hard word to apply to family," she said gently. "But sometimes it's the accurate one. Let's explore that." Over the following weeks, we unpacked decades of dysfunction. The parentification I'd experienced as the oldest child, the golden child syndrome with Madison, the enabling behavior I'd developed, the way I'd learned to equate love with financial provision because that was the only contribution they seemed to value. "Your worth isn't measured in dollars," Dr. Goldstein told me during one session. "But they taught you it was. They trained you to prove your love through money, then criticized you for not providing enough emotional presence. You couldn't win because the game was rigged." Christmas came and went. I spent it volunteering at a free clinic, then treating myself to an expensive dinner at a restaurant I'd always wanted to try but could never justify the cost of. I bought myself presents, nice ones, a new laptop, some clothes that actually fit well, books I'd been wanting to read. It felt strange, but good, to spend money on myself without guilt. My phone was quiet on Christmas Day. They'd finally gotten the message. New Year's Eve found me at Sarah's house party, surrounded by colleagues and friends who actually cared about me. At midnight, as everyone cheered and hugged, I made a resolution. This year would be about building the life I'd always deserved. January brought unexpected changes. A patient I'd treated months earlier, a wealthy businessman named Gregory Hartman, who'd suffered a compound fracture, contacted me. He wanted to thank me properly for saving his ability to walk and offered to connect me with his financial advisor. "Dr. Bennett, you did more than fix my leg," Gregory said over lunch. "You gave me my life back. The least I can do is help you build a future you deserve." His advisor, a sharp woman named Rebecca Torres, took one look at my finances and practically gasped. "You have almost nothing saved for retirement? How is that possible on a surgeon's salary?" I explained the situation, all of it. Rebecca's expression shifted from confusion to anger to determination. "We're fixing this," she declared. "You're 36. We have time, but we need to be aggressive. No more letting anyone derail my financial security." She created a comprehensive plan, maxing out retirement accounts, building a proper emergency fund, investing in index funds, even setting aside money for the house I'd been dreaming about. For the first time in my adult life, I had a financial roadmap that centered my needs instead of someone else's crisis. In January, I put an offer on a house, a beautiful 3-bedroom Craftsman with a big backyard and a fireplace, everything I'd ever wanted. The offer was accepted. I cried when I got the news, but these were happy tears. The closing process took longer than expected, nearly 2 months with inspections, appraisals, and mortgage paperwork. But finally, in early March, I got the keys. I also adopted a dog from the shelter while waiting for the house to close. A 3-year-old golden retriever mix named Charlie, who had been overlooked because he was older and not a puppy. We were perfect for each other. Both of us undervalued. Both of us deserving of better. He stayed with me in my apartment until we could move into our new home together. February brought an unexpected email from Jennifer, Kyle's wife. She asked if we could meet for coffee. I was hesitant but agreed. We met at a neutral location, a cafe downtown. "I need you to know something," Jennifer said immediately after we sat down. I didn't realize how bad things were. How much you'd been contributing. How much they'd been lying to us about it. "Okay," I said carefully. "Kyle and I have been fighting about it," she continued. "He wants to pretend everything's fine, that you were overreacting, but I can't. I keep thinking about what you said at dinner, about how nobody ever asked how you were doing, how nobody celebrated your success, and you were right. We didn't. We just assumed you had it easy because you're a doctor." I didn't say anything, just let her talk. "Your parents are selling the house," she told me. "They can't afford it. They're moving into a condo in a less expensive area. Madison's furious about it because apparently she was expecting to inherit that house someday. Can you believe that?" I could absolutely believe it. "Kyle returned the boat," Jennifer continued. "Took him until spring to find a buyer since he listed it in winter, but he sold it at a loss. He wanted to pay your parents back the money they loaned him. When he found out it was actually your money, he wanted to pay you back instead. I have a check." She pulled an envelope from her purse. I stared at it but didn't take it. "Keep it," I said. "Ashley, I don't want it," she insisted. I said firmly. It was a gift as far as Kyle knew. "I'm not going to turn it into a debt now. That's not who I am." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. "You're a better person than any of us deserve." Maybe I allowed. Or maybe I'm just done letting money define my relationships. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry," she said. "I should have been kinder to you. Should have asked more questions. Should have defended you when the others were ganging up." "You should have," I agreed. "But I appreciate you saying it." We talked for another hour. She told me about the fallout in the family, how Madison and Mom weren't speaking, how Dad had become withdrawn and depressed, how Kyle was reassessing his relationship with his parents. It was messy and complicated, and exactly what happens when years of dysfunction finally come to light. I felt sympathy for them, but I didn't feel responsible for fixing it. That was growth, I supposed. Life continued. Spring brought warm weather and the joy of finally moving into my new house. I hosted a housewarming party for my friends from the hospital. Real friends who supported me and celebrated my success without jealousy or expectation. It was the best party I'd ever attended. Charlie loved the new house. He spent hours in the backyard chasing squirrels and napping in the sun. Coming home to him every day made the long shifts bearable. He didn't care that I was a doctor or that I made good money. He just cared that I came home and loved him. I started dating. Not seriously, but I put myself out there in ways I'd never felt I could before. When you're constantly stressed about money and family obligations, romance takes a back seat. With those pressures gone, I had space for it. In May, I got a letter in the mail, my mother's familiar handwriting on the envelope. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity won out. The letter was long, several pages of careful handwriting. Mom apologized, truly apologized, without excuses or justifications. She admitted they'd been wrong to hide my contributions from Madison and Kyle. She acknowledged that they'd taken advantage of my generosity and sense of family loyalty. She said she understood if I never wanted to speak to them again, but that she hoped someday I might be willing to try. At the bottom, she included their new address and phone number. No pressure, just information in case I wanted it. I put the letter in a drawer and didn't think about it for a while. Eventually, maybe I'd be ready to reach out. Maybe I'd be able to have some kind of relationship with them again on my terms, with clear boundaries. But that day wasn't today, and it might not be tomorrow either. The important thing was that I was okay. More than okay, actually. I was thriving. My career was flourishing. My finances were secure. My home was my own, and my life was full of genuine connections rather than obligatory ones. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who don't value you, even when those people are family. Sometimes contributing to your own happiness is more important than contributing to someone else's comfort. I learned that lesson the hard way, but I learned it, and I'll never forget it again. My name is Ashley, and I am an orthopedic surgeon. But more profoundly, I am a woman who finally chose herself. That, I now understand, isn't selfishness. It is survival. It is self-respect. It is the courageous act of knowing your worth and steadfastly refusing to accept anything less than you inherently deserve.